Well, welcome. It seems you tuned in just in time to catch our Colorado train adventure. First up is the Colorado Railroad Museum. Hope we don't find any delays inside, but let's get going. Interestingly enough, we have 4 playing cards to cover some of the locations we're at. Logan has a card right there for the Colorado Railroad Museum. So far, so good. Sort of a cool place, has lots of large full-size trains to include several galloping geese, which are always cool because they're so unique. Anyway, we'll take a little ride later, but first up we'll look at some G-scale stuff outside. It's kind of fun. Some young unknown rail fan standing next to me was telling me all about the trains. Time for our train ride. Logan picked out the original coach from the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad. Even had a little logo thing in the floor. Car itself was quite fancy, so we had a good time. Check out the armrest with all the detail and even the little latch that moves the seat back and forth. Quite fancy and intricate. You don't see this kind of detail today. As we do one of 3 laps around the compound, the conductor is going to tell us all about the story and history of the Galloping Goose. Check it out.
They found it economically impossible to run a full train like the one you're on, pulled by a steam engine with 3 or 4 cars and a caboose and a crew of half a dozen people every day. They simply couldn't afford it any longer. But they had a mail contract delivering the United States mail to all those little towns up in the mountains was what was keeping the little railroad alive. So the guys in their shops, which were at Ridgeway, they scratched their heads and thought real hard, and they went out back and they took the front off an old Buick and they made a flatbed truck and they set the whole shooting match on the narrow gauge rail. Well, I know if you just think that over for a couple of seconds, you'll catch on that it only took one person to operate instead of a crew of 6. Deliver the mail, a few packages going, and a couple of folks who wanted to go to town to do their grocery shopping. Well, the people who lived up there in the mountains, they would see this apparition coming down the rails into town, and the way they described it was that the motor car, well, I'll tell you what it does. The thing, well, it waddles on the tracks as it comes in, which, by the way, it most certainly did, because it didn't have any shock absorbers or springs or anything else. So the people up there named it the Goose, and they've been the Galloping Goose ever since. There were only 7 ever built. 6 of the 7 are in Colorado. 1 escaped to California. It's at Knott's Berry Farm, and 3 of that 6 live right here at the Colorado Railroad Museum. By the way, just parenthetically, all 7 of the Galloping Geese are still operational 90 years later. So the guys at Ridgeway did a pretty good job.
There's also a story out there about how the side hoods would flap up and down as it bounced down the rails, looking like wings flapping, thus the Galloping Goose. Notice the narrow gauge rail and the standard gauge rail all in one. Well, it seems the number 3 switcher Pee-wee never turns down an opportunity for a free spin, so Logan is more than happy to oblige. Notice how Logan, who has taken several safety classes, is careful never to step on a rail, while the worker steps on all the rails. Well, down in the basement, they have an HO display, so let's check it out. Saw this wall display, kind of interesting. Really liking this steam shovel here. As you know, Colorado knows how to do serious snow, so they also know how to make and buy serious snow removing stuff. I really dig the rotary the best, but that big plow is kind of cool too. Speaking of real snow blowers, we'll inject this photo just for size and for fun. As we finish this up, Logan waits patiently. If you remember old libraries that had like a ladder on rollers, well, that's what they have for the little kids. It's kind of interesting, pretty impressive. You can push the ladder real easy if you're not on it. I was a little surprised to see it, but I guess it's no different than standing on a chair. As we leave, I got to toss in this Gramps tank car. Actually has an interesting story if anybody wants to hear it. Next, we double back to the suburbs of Denver to visit the Forney Museum. It's a transportation museum, so they have lots of nice-looking cars, some not-so-nice-looking cars. It's also home to one of the big boys. However, there's other locos in there, so it's really hard to get a nice shot of the big boy, but there it is anyway. Well, with gift shop souvenirs in hand, we make it to our hotel just before the rain. Ooh, a double rainbow. How nice. Next day, bright and early, we're at the Georgetown Loop. In the past, they ran all steam, but now they run diesels too. Lucky for us, the first run of the day was steam. 3 whistles. I guess we're backing up. As the loco backs down the hill from the shed, we back up also to get a full ride. Well, after a short back down, it's all uphill from here, to include going over the Devil's Gate Trestle, which is actually the claim to fame of the Georgetown Loop. A lot of nice scenery on the way up, to include some waterfalls as well as the woods. Well, as we enter the Silver Plume Depot, time for the engine to get on the other side of the train to back us down the hill. Well, let's just see if these guys do a good job coupling up or if they're going to launch me off the train platform. Well, for anybody that doesn't know, 1 whistle blast means, hey, I'm stopped, you're safe to go forward, and 2 whistle blasts means, here I come forward. The hand signal in Colorado means, come to me. Well, nicely done. On the way down, we opted to do the gold mine tour. You have to get tickets in advance. So as we said, the steam engine's resting and the diesel took us the rest of the way home. And after we got in the station, the diesel has to go to the other end so it can pull the next train up the hill. We next jump in the car, drive about 2 miles up to Silver Plume, check out the gift shop, and also this is where they parked the locomotives. So took a shot, asked the gift shop guy if he would escort us up close to get better pictures of the number 40, which he did. So thanks to him, we get to see the loco and the counterweights and all kind of other moving parts up close. Well, I can't be sure, but as we speed away to our next destination, I could have swore we saw Bigfoot, but that's crazy talk. Well, it seemed nobody in our group wanted to be tortured with that zigzaggedy climb up the hill road to get to Winter Park to see the west portal of the Moffat Tunnel, but there it is if you're interested. Next day, we leave our 8,500 feet, get a little over 10,000 feet at Leadville to ride this train. Sadly, we're not going to take the steam locomotive, but rather a diesel. But hey, we got cab rides on the way down the hill, so that should be exciting. Going up the hill, the diesel is going to push us backwards, so I guess that's the reason for the only downhill cab ride. But hey, it's still fun. Leadville actually turned out to be more scenic than I would have guessed. Yeah, I'm sitting on a steel deck. Paid extra for this seat. Hello. Yeah, we can't believe we're allowed to be here, but you know, just make Jimmy go crazy, so that's worth it. Now you're looking at a pretty steep drop-off cliff on the right side of the track there. Kind of fun. As you can see, Logan's taking pictures inside while I take pictures outside still. That guy there was some kind of local TV cameraman. Don't really know what he was doing. Anyway, scenery's pretty cool out here. Well, I noticed I was all by myself out there, so I decided to go back in the cab, see what's going on. Imagine my shock. So there's the engineer. Oh my gosh! Logan will take any opportunity to drive a train, whether real or HO.
Yes, that's a little more.
It was sort of amazing and super cool the engineer let Logan drive the train for a long time. There's Logan with a hand on the dynamic brake. Fortunately, the engineer was close by, but Logan got to drive the train for a good 45 minutes. Impressive. Not sure if it helped or not, but we did let it slip to the engineer that Logan, while at rail camp last week in Washington, actually operated a diesel locomotive at the Tacoma Rail. Coming up to a road that goes up to over 13,000 feet. Logan told me later the dynamic brake went between 3.5 to about 7.5 back and forth, depending on the grade. So yeah, he got to do that. You can see the rest of the train there off in the distance, coming down the hill. They mentioned on the way up the hill that this particular curve was really sharp, and they were a little bit surprised that the diesel could actually handle it. starting to go around a couple curves. I thought it'd be interesting to watch the rail move back and forth against the black bar there. A little bit of a drop off.
He didn't tell me where the bell was.
Well, as the train pulls into the station, we're at 10,000, actually 10,100 and some feet higher up in the hill. Anyway, following a pro tip, we were told you don't want to sleep at elevation if you can help it. So we're going to have lunch and head on down to Cannon City for the Royal Gorge train tomorrow. So we're going to get out of Dodge. We did feel a little bit of, had some headaches, had some stomach issues, but all in all, a really good day. Well, continuing south to Cannon City, not too bad of a ride. All right, the next day at Cannon City, we see the locomotive is pulled into the gas station, or maybe the gas station is pulled up to the locomotive. Anyway, they're getting fuel. I forget just how many cars the train was, but it was a very impressive long train. Must admit, both Logan and I expected to ride in this diesel, or at bare minimum, that diesel, but turns out they were sort of celebrating Christmas in July, so we got to ride in the Christmas diesel. The depot is actually a Santa Fe depot back in the day, kind of cool, but we got another cab ride, so up in the cab we go. Get a quick look at the controls there and maybe do like a little slower look. Then the engineer said he has to pay strict attention as he leaves the city, so he's got to blow the horn and do some stuff, so we take our time and take some pictures. Well, Colorado knows how to do scenic railroads, and the Royal Gorge is no exception. Spectacular scenery as the train follows us up the hill. Not too big of a hill at least, so not as big as Leadville and some other place we'll visit tomorrow. Anyway, kind of an interesting story. Back in the day, a bunch of prisoners were forced to build a wooden water line to feed Cannon City. At least the prisoner's family got free drinking water out of the deal, but that was kind of interesting. Anyway, as we get close to the high bridge over the Royal Gorge, the engineer says that they always blow the horn a lot just to wake up the people on the bridge, and I guess the people really dig it. Engineer asked Logan if he wanted to blow the whistle, so of course he blows shaving a haircut first. Then the engineer looks at him and goes, "Nice, now let's hear a railroad crossing." So he does that properly also. Then he gets to blow the whistle a whole lot just to make some noise. Sort of hard to see, but up ahead is a spot where a photographer taking pictures of kayakers often sits. So he has to blow the whistle to wake up the photographer. We'll toss in a token shot of some whitewater rafters. The whole line was also having signal problems, thus the flashing yellow light, so a mechanic was up in his high railer and would follow us down the hill to fix all the signals. Well, before we leave, we'll say goodbye to maintenance guy and his high railer. I didn't hear the conversation, but Logan and the engineer talked about replacing the horn. Both seemed to think it was a good idea. Speaking of the engineer, thanks for a really nice ride. Take a quick look at the controls, dynamic brake, the throttle's under that. Overview of everything, so much to look at. Dynamic brake and power, air pressure gauges for the brakes, several of the switches, and above that a bunch of cheat sheets. The shiny needle thing sticking out is the dead man switch. Lift it up to show you're alive. And there's the speedometer and some other interesting stuff below the speedometer. And we'll take one final look at the train, and then we'll take a look at these two clowns who, for some reason, like to pose on locomotives. Well, after the train ride and a pretty decent lunch in the caboose right there, we drove up to see the bridge. We opted not to walk on the bridge because, well, it was like 1,000,000 degrees out. As an experiment, I took about 12 shots doing a focus stack to get everything in focus from the little cactus in front to the clouds in the back. And I think it came out pretty good. Well, it's now time to head north to Manitou Springs. Interestingly enough, if you want to spend the night at Cheyenne Mountain, all you have to do is sneak in, or, well, maybe you'll spend a night in a pokey. Not sure. The Manitou Springs, home of the Cog Railroad. Also, they like to tell you all about the water. We all opted not to do the 2,700 steps, but instead went to the Penny Arcade. Well, after dropping a few bucks at the Penny Arcade, we go over to the Garden of Gods, which is really a cool place to visit. You can even climb there if you got the proper permits, or you just climb when nobody's looking. But you got to be careful that the balanced rock, if it becomes unbalanced like here, well, sadly to report, we now have one less traveler, but the vacation continues. Accidentally got to see a few cool birds and this baby mule deer looking for mom. Well, it's time to leave Garden of Gods, go to the hotel for the night. Hopefully we can find a Cog Railroad the next day. I forget the name of the place right now, but I'm sure it'll come to me. Anyway, lessons learned. We heard a rumor that it was like 40 degrees up on top of the hill and windy, so we all buy sweatshirts. The sweatshirts weren't exactly cheap. However, when we got to the top, it was really cold and really windy, so I guess it was worth it after all. Anyway, on with the show. As we look at the back of the train, we were happy to learn that we had front row seats on the total opposite end, which will give us good views out the window. Just so you don't get confused, these are not Lionel tracks. The middle thing is the rack to help the gear pull the train up the hill, not to be confused with the electric power transformer. As we get ready to roll, I think they should have paid a little bit more money for a better horn. Yep, that was it. Well, they didn't say it was going to be a fast ride, but at two places they will have a 25% grade, which is way steep. Interesting scenery going up as we climb up to over 14,000 feet. Sooner or later we'll leave all the trees behind, and then we'll see some marmots on the way up. Sure hope the train stops before it runs out of track. Well, we're now safely at the top. We see the Pikes Peak sign. As some go inside and get the ever-popular high-altitude donuts, I decided to do a lap around and catch some scenery. It was really windy and really cold, but the clouds were really, really nice. They were blowing by pretty fast, so I got all sorts of different cloud formations, which made me happy. I did get one bite of a high-altitude donut, which, it's only so-so. Anyway, it's almost time to go. give you like 40 minutes up here so you don't actually get altitude sickness. So a quick look at the controls. Our engineer went to the other end so she could see where she's going. There's a gold mine there. I decided to include this photo of the old wooden ties to remind me to tell you that somebody donated $100 million to the railroad, so they have all new ties, all new everything, and 2 new trains. Pretty impressive. I wish they would donate that to me too. Well, as our downhill ride gets close to being done, kind of a funny little story. The conductor was telling us several times about the high ball, and no, not that high ball. You know, if the ball is all the way up or high, signal to go fast. If it's down low, go slow. Anyway, the conductor said back in the day it was the conductor that raised and lowered the ball, which is not correct. It'd be the guy hanging out in that little shed. But we didn't really want to tell her she was wrong, and it's a good thing we didn't, because she had fun with it every time we made a movement.
10 to 15 minutes away of being back at the depot. Rebecca, you have the high ball.
Well, as that train goes up the hill, we go down the hill. Looks like the end is in sight, so I guess so is our ride. Well, it's time to leave Manitou Springs, head back to Denver. Another place we opted not to go was the Cripple Creek Railroad, a little 2-foot narrow gauge. It's so far away, it's not really worth the effort, or at least we don't think it was. We did stop at this place. I had no idea what it was, but if you're ever in one of these cities, we happen to be in Denver, you probably ought to check it out. It's really pretty crazy. Check this out. The following videos are one small fraction of the place. We also made a stop in the aquarium. Fortunately, it was feeding time for the rays, so holding the shrimp between 2 fingers, voila.
He did not want it. He did. That's weird. Okay. Stingray, anybody? Anybody hungry? This guy.
All right, to wrap up this video, I got a couple little Colorado fun facts for you. The highest paved road in North America is near Idaho Springs, near Mount Evans, and is at 14,258 feet. The 13th step of Colorado's state capitol building in Denver is exactly 1 mile above sea level. Leadville is the highest incorporated city in the United States at 10,430 feet. I like this one. The name Colorado comes from the Spanish word Colorado, which means colored red. On the way to Leadville, we drove through the Dwight Eisenhower Memorial Tunnel on I-70. It's the highest vehicular tunnel in the U.S. with an elevation of 11,158 feet, and it's 1.6 miles long. 75% of Colorado is above 10,000 feet. Here's a real tearjerker. Despite Denver being the home of the U.S. Olympic Committee and the Olympic Training Center, it was turned down to host the Winter Olympics in 1970. All right, enough trivia. Did I mention that? Well, never mind. Well, hope you enjoyed our little 4 railroad circle tour. I see the caboose is here, so this is the end of the video.